You've inherited a home in Denver, Colorado, but now probate has its hands all over it. Today, we're talking about what to do with a home in probate, and I've got Jeff Phillips from Vindicator Solutions on with us. Thanks for being here, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. So before we dive into this topic about probate, why don't you give the viewers a little bit of a summary on Vindicator Solutions and what you do?
I help homeowners navigate tough situations like foreclosure, probate, and other financial hardships. I work with lenders, estate planners, and probate attorneys to help come up with a better way.
Yeah. Well, and also financial advisors and flippers and investors and
Realtors, yeah.
private money lenders, like all kinds of people.
I have worked with just about everybody, yeah.
Mhm. That's one of the things that I love about you and what you're doing is that you do have a lot of connections. You know exactly what's going on, you know the process, and you are really able to come into someone's home and offer them help by offering them different solutions. So, I think a lot of people that are knocking or calling after a loved one has died, I think a lot of those people are pushing one solution, whatever it is that they're trying to sell, right? But in your case, what you're offering is true help in terms of helping homeowners understand that they have more than one option and what the different options are. Fact or fiction? You can't sell a home in probate until probate is finished.
Fiction. You can actually get the process started right away. The only thing is you need to make sure that you have the clear personal representative that's legally able to sign off on all the documents. And usually the first thing I do when I talk to someone that I know is in foreclosure or somebody's passed away and that's why they're in foreclosure, but not always have to be in foreclosure, but during the probate process is, you know, joint tenants, how do you hold title, joint tenants or tenants in common? Because that'll tell me if they need to go through the probate process or if I can easily just have an attorney get them personal representative to sign off.
That's right. So, this how you hold title is such an interesting topic to me because I got into this is my second career, right? And before I got into real estate as a career, it was really kind of more personal, a little bit hobby. And when I started doing real estate classes and I found out about joint tenants versus tenants in common, it was one of the things that made me go, I wonder why I have never learned this from a realtor of mine in the past. Because, in the past, I was married to someone who was my daughter's stepdad, right? And if my realtor had asked me, do you want joint tenants with your husband, joint tenancy, or do you want tenants in common, and explain the difference? I for sure would have picked tenants in common because I would have wanted my half of the house, should something happen to me, go to my daughter. I wouldn't have wanted it to go to my second husband, right? And I'm sure that we were in joint tenancy because I don't think anybody bothered to ask me. And when you're in joint tenancy, if something happens to one of you, your share of the house automatically goes to the other person. It never even goes through probate. So anyways, that's just a fun fact.
I try to keep in talks with my local escrow officer at your title company. The title company is going to be able to tell you right away what process you need to go through in order to sell your house.
What?
Mhm.
I didn't keep up with that. I would not call a title company to sell a house.
So in my experience in my business, how I leverage the title company and my escrow officer is as soon as I find someone has passed away, the owners have passed away that are on title, or one of the owners has passed away that are on title, I will call my escrow officer and ask just to just to get their opinion and say, hey, here's a property I'm planning on working on. Can you please let me know just to make sure what process they need to go through? I just want to double check. And usually, I'm pretty spot on when I see that it's joint tenants or tenants in common. But you can also find out that yes, but make sure we need a original copy of the death certificate, or we need signatures from here, or no, it needs to go through probate because we do not have clear title. And so that's why I usually, just to check my box, call a title company to get that information. So,
Gotcha. Okay, that makes more sense. Thanks
yeah.
for explaining that.
Mhm.
The and in Colorado, so I know sometimes I think maybe because of TV, we think about an executor of an estate. But can you tell the difference between an executor of an estate versus the personal representative? Because I think those are two different things, aren't they?
The personal representative is usually next of kin if it's the only beneficiary, but the executor is usually planned ahead of time to operate on the behalf of the person that passed away.
Okay, so an executor is in place when someone has done estate planning, and pay attention because estate planning is how you stay out of probate. Whereas if you're already to that point and you have to go through probate because you didn't do the ahead planning, now the court is going to appoint a personal representative, and that's the person who's going to take care of handling everything.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I have had some people in the past finish a beneficiary's deed before passing, so that was also sufficient enough to prevent them from having to go through the probate process and allowing enough for that beneficiary to sign off on the sale of the house.
Yeah, that's a good idea too. Yeah, because not everybody knows when they're going to pass away, right? But some people do, and if they can quickly kind of get some things in order before they go, beneficiary's deed is definitely going to keep the house out of probate.
Absolutely.
I had a friend whose mom passed away, and this whole idea of, not waiting until the very end, or waiting, just waiting until you're pushed into making decisions. The more planning you can do ahead of time. What had happened with her is, mom passed away. Now everything's going into probate. And there was this long period of time where, you have to find a lawyer and go to court and make, do these filings and all this stuff. And by the time that she had her personal representative paperwork, what's the name of that? It's like the papers that they have, isn't it? That says that where the court appointed them to be the personal representative. But by the time that she got that paperwork, the house was in foreclosure.
One of the stories I have that I remember dearly is I knocked on the door of a woman in Fountain, Colorado, and she was in foreclosure because what had happened was her mom passed away with no will, and the younger sister contested her for the house because this individual was taking care of her mom in her house, and they unspokenly said, well, this person should deserve the house, right? I was taking care of mom while the younger sister was in need of money. So she wanted her to sell the house so they can split the proceeds. Well, that ended up them going to court, and $15,000 later and months later, she ended up in foreclosure because she was not able to work. She was so distraught over the loss of her mom and her sister taking her to court that she ended up in foreclosure. And so that's one of the things you want to make sure you do is take care of that before that happens. Yeah.
I find this happens a lot on these videos where like we jump into this conversation and we're talking about this stuff that like you and I are like, we're on the same page. We know what we're talking about, right? But let's back up for a second. Yeah. And let's talk about like what is probate?
Right, right. Well, probate is the process when somebody passes away and there's no clear will or trust that lays out what that family wants to do with the estate. And so in that moment, the state does get involved and goes through probate so they can decide who is the rightful beneficiary, who is the personal representative. They usually pick it based on what makes the most sense once it gets to the court level and not what your wishes were and the family.
For sure. And just a point of clarification that even if you have a will, your will still goes through probate. The only way to completely avoid probate is either through that, with the house specifically, is through the joint tenancy thing. But just in general in the estate, the only way to avoid probate is to do estate planning, kind of have everything in a trust. Um, but Yeah, and then the courts, they, when you're saying they make the beneficiary, like, whoever makes sense, they have a very clear, like, okay, the first person who has dibs is a spouse. The second person or people who have dibs are children, and then they would split it equally among children. The third way, and then if you don't have a spouse, you don't have children, the third route they'll go is to parents. And so the court definitely has it, like, spelled out, like how the heirs go and who they look to first, second, third, all the way down the line.
And that's correct. They actually mail out if those people are unresponsive to the court, sending them legal certified mail documents to say, "Hey, you're here to contest whether you want to be, personal representative or how do you want to take care of this." I've had instances where they could never get a hold of family members that should have received a piece, and sometimes family members just sign off their rights and say, "I don't want anything to do with it."
Mhm.
And that's how they take care of it. Now, the the one thing I do know is wills are contestable and trusts are not, so just know that.
Yeah. Very important. And I know that Jeff and I both have great real estate attorney referrals. And I guess maybe I should be saying this early and often during this episode. We are not attorneys. We are not giving legal advice. But we know a little bit and we know enough to get you guys some more information about this topic, and to get you where you need to go, right? So, like, either of us, our Vindicator Solutions or Property Dominator, are a very good first stop with somebody who is going to help lay out your options and get you connected with the right people. Because I know we both do that.
Right. We just don't want you to get caught, by surprise because unfortunately, we all have that day, and so we just want to make sure that you're taken care of and not having to deal with the stress of both losing a house and a loved one at the same time.
Yeah, yeah. It's sad and difficult.
Mhm.
Not Let's talk about a myth that I've heard. The easiest thing to do with a house that you've inherited is just sell it as fast as possible. What do you think about that?
That's an option if the house is in horrible condition, it's up and down and you need branch level, it's got a leak in the basement or mold. But also another thing to think of is what do we want to do with our legacy? Do we want to keep the house because of sentimental value, or do we want to start thinking like investors and say, mom or dad or whoever meant for this to be our inheritance? How are we going to treat this? And that's when you want to definitely reach out to an expert or professional to find out what you could do with what you have in your estate.
For sure, because especially as it relates to the house, I mean, you've heard it. Real estate is location, location, location. And real estate is also strategic. And so, if you inherit a house, it could be, maybe you want to live there. Maybe that's a great place for you to live. That's one option. Another option is to maybe keep it out and rent it out and make it be this, high performing or at least a cash flowing financial asset. Have some renters help pay it down. If the mortgage isn't already paid off, you could get some renters to pay that down and kind of build up a portfolio or have this one financial asset. Um, and then also, the idea of selling, of course, you can always sell a house, but I encourage you to do it strategically because, maybe the house that you inherited isn't in a great location. Maybe it's in a different state than where you're at. Or maybe it's in just a different neighborhood than where you want to be. And in that case, maybe selling is the good option, that allows you to strategically purchase something else where you want to be, or purchase more rental property that might cash flow better. So there's just a lot of stuff, a lot of things to consider.
And not only that, the other thing I run into is folks that inherit a house. Are they able to make the payment? Um, are you able to refi and qualify for that house if you had to? And so that is another thing that I run into where people end up having to sell is the payment that was left on the mortgage. They do not want to inherit, and so it's not just the house; it's a financial decision you got to make. So.
Well, and if there's enough equity in the house, it might be possible to put a new 30-year mortgage on it and refi it and get the payment down. So
That's the best way.
yeah, there's just so many options. So what kind of options do families have when their home goes into probate?
So I actually work alongside, as you mentioned, with I work closely with an estate attorney, and he does probate. That's the bread and butter of his business. And because he's worked with me so many times, he actually doesn't charge my clients anything up front if we're buying the house or if they're selling the home. He's able to invoice them at the end. So what I mean by that is a lot of folks think they don't have the option to hire an attorney. They might try to do probate themselves, which is, we'll get into that, why you do not want to do that, especially when there's a timeline. But definitely call, because a lot of people that I've seen end up in foreclosure, they froze and said, "Well, I don't have the money to hire an attorney, so therefore I guess this is it." And I actually have resources for people like that to have an attorney work for them, help them, get them through the process, and they're not going to ask you for a dollar up front.
That is just such a sad situation when people decide ahead of time without knowing all the options. They already decide that they don't have any options or that they can't do this or that. And we're just trying to tell you guys that you can and you do have options. So even if things are looking, black and bleak, reach out for help, reach out to somebody who can help you.
Yeah, for sure. Let us take that burden off your shoulders, because the loss of a loved one and dealing with that's enough. So definitely let us take that off your shoulders. So
Okay, so the options, so people once they get into probate, obviously once a personal representative is chosen, that person could choose to sell the house cuz really the personal representative once they have those papers from the judge, they can do whatever they want with that entire estate is my understanding. So they certainly can sell it and they could be selling it out from under if there's other family who's living in the house, right? So just be aware of that. So keeping the property, refinancing it, buying it out, renting it is an option. Selling it as is, or, maybe making some improvements or doing something to, bring it up to a marketable for an end user. Because you can get a little bit more money when it's in nicer shape,
right,
right?
right.
Am I missing anything?
No, most of the time I run into the homes in this situation. They've got plenty of options with equity to make some upgrades, or do some other things rather than just quickly sell.
That's right, because if there's equity in the home, I mean, you could connect them with a hard money lender to do some updates. And I know of some other programs too, like that Notable, where you can kind of take money out of equity. Of course, that gets paid off at closing, so you have to be selling the house to do that. But yeah, lots of options. What do you think are the biggest mistakes that people make when their property's in probate?
I think just making decisions based off their own education and information without having the right knowledge to move forward. I think that a lot of people just try to do it themselves once again, and that's just a scary thing to think, because like I said, I have full attorneys handling these things for you so that you don't have to worry about that. And if money's an issue, then don't let that stop you. But that, I would say, that was probably my biggest thing.
I'm sitting here laughing because it's that thing like, you can cut your own hair, but should you?
Yeah, you definitely don't want to cut corners on this one. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And just reach out. There's a lot of resources out there, especially if you're a veteran. There's a lot of resources for you out there if you have a VA loan. So
Nice.
yeah.
What else? Oh, let not taking care of the home. So this is a big thing. Like if you inherit a home and maybe you don't want it, and that's okay. Home ownership is a responsibility. But if you inherit a home and you want to try to get the most value out of it, like please don't let it just sit vacant and ignore it. I mean, even if it's not you checking on it or, maintaining it a little bit, I mean, the amount that it would cost to have somebody caretake it just a tiny bit, can't be that much. But I think ignoring it is a terrible idea. So we're talking about mistakes that people make when they've got a house in probate. Um, I, you got one?
So you can make payments to the lender once, let's say your parents die or somebody dies that you're taking care of, and instead of letting the property now go into foreclosure, you can call the bank and they will work with you just to make sure, and just let them know you're going to have to go through the probate process. That way they don't just think that somebody stopped paying the mortgage, and then you don't want to have both those things going out at the same time because both of them have their own timelines. I've seen probate take a week, 2 weeks. I've seen some of it take months. So you definitely want to be on top of that if you can.
Yeah, I had a situation where a person did not inherited a house. They did not know what mortgages or home equity loans were on it or maybe on it. They thought they knew, but they didn't. It turned out they didn't. And one of the things that, hindsight being 2020, and I'm always learning stuff, right? And like perfecting my craft. So one of the things that I have started doing is I always call title and pull an O&E report, which is an ownership and encumbrances report. And that will tell you what liens are on the house. And so, like, if I would have done that in that situation, I could have easily told that person, hey, here are the liens that are recorded on the house. So these are the people that you need to be trying to call. Now, I'm not sure it would have made a huge difference actually, because, the banks won't talk to anybody. They would only have talked to whoever was on the mortgage, and that person had passed away, and now they're waiting for that personal representative to be appointed by the judge. So I'm not sure that that person would have ended up in a different place, but I think it is important to know about that O&E report because title can pull that for $5.
Yeah, I pull that card every time I'm working with someone. If I know we're going to start to get down to doing something for them, I get with my title rep, get that ordered, and then that tells me what I need to do from there. If there's anything I need to do pivot wise, based on the numbers that I see on that O&E.
So, in addition to ignoring a mortgage payment, the other stuff that you don't want to ignore is homeowners insurance and property taxes. I think you might have some more leniency with property taxes in terms of like if you let that lapse, like I think you have more time to cure it. But homeowners insurance, boy, I would not let that lapse. I mean, if something happened, and now you find out the home isn't even insured, yikes.
There's a lot of exposure in that time, and you definitely want to stay on top of the homeowner's insurance just in case something happens. You're gonna possibly have a vacant home. I've seen people take on squatters during that time, and so the squatters had definitely damaged the house, and so you want to make sure that you keep that intact for sure.
hmm Um, and something that we mentioned on our other episode, we did an episode on foreclosures, is this whole idea of, there's a list. Like you know exactly where to go find a list of people who are hitting the foreclosure list, and you know exactly where to go to find all the people who are in probate, right? And so if you're in one of those situations, you're gonna have people calling and knocking at your door. I know you're one of those people.
Yeah.
But I guess what I want to say here is that if any of those people are giving you creepy vibes, are being pushy, are trying to, are stressing you out in any way, or, or pushing one option for you instead of, saying, hey, here's all the options you have right now. If any of that stuff is happening, just stop and call Vindicator Solutions, call Property Dominator, call a trusted realtor, and reach out for help. But do not sign anything with these people that are pushy and trying to get you to sign a contract on your house.
No, that's right. And chances are, if you call me or if you call Kiki, we're gonna end up working with each other in this situation because I like to bring everybody I can, to have on your behalf to make sure the best solution and the best foot forward happens. And so, in that moment, definitely, be careful. There's some players out there that can give you bad information, and I've seen people, yeah, lose their houses because they had bad information from the wrong people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really too bad. So in addition to this whole idea of working with a professional who's on your side and advocating for you, let's talk a little bit about how families can protect the value of a home that they inherited. And I know we already touched on making sure you have insurance, homeowners insurance, making sure that you're keeping up with property taxes. We talked about squatters, so making sure the home is secure if it's vacant. What else? What am I missing?
I think that's pretty much it. And then, just not advertising a lot of things. Just try to keep it within you. I know sometimes people are aware in the neighborhood and everyone finds out. You just try to keep it private until we find the right people to get a hold of you.
Mm.
So
Oh, utilities. That was another one. Keep the utilities running. Let's see. Oh, we've got another fact or fiction. So, fact or fiction, Jeff, all inherited homes go through probate.
that's fiction. Not all inherited homes go through probate, especially if you and your family took the time to sit down with an estate planner. I told Kiki this on another call between us that in the word real estate agent is estate. And so if your real estate agent isn't at least advising you to sit down at some point with an estate planner together to talk about putting your home in a trust or some other protected vehicle other than just leaving it up to chance, then um, I would run the other way. So make sure you talk to someone that's telling you how to protect your home in that event.
That's true. That's something that I've added to my buyer meetings, and when I'm working with buyers, I've added this whole idea of once you own property, that's the time to have an estate plan. If you don't own property, you likely don't have enough assets or whatever to make it, worth your time to do an estate plan. But when you have property, that's the time to do it. So, you know that we just bought our home and the new Prop Dom HQ. And I've already been on the phone with my real estate attorney to talk to him about creating a trust. If you don't have real estate, you may not have enough assets to make it make sense to do a trust. But once you have real estate, you do. Like now you have a very large financial asset that should for sure be in a trust. And as part of those services, they're going to do like probably suggest like a pour over will, have all the healthcare stuff like the living will, what else? The trust, and then putting all of your accounts into the trust, not just the house. And so it's just a whole package that attorneys can do for you. And I know what I was talking about doing is going to be 7 grand. And, it sounds like a lot of money, right? You start talking about thousands of dollars and it feels like, oh, that's a lot of money. However, how do you know off the top of your head what somebody could expect to pay if they go through probate?
Well, probate, right out the door, I've gotten quoted at $8,000, and that was, through my trusted partners that I work with on a regular basis that uh, also always try to give me a deal for my clients. That's why they do it up front, no cost, to where they can get them through the process, and then at some sort of closing, they get paid on invoice.
So
It's
you think 8 grand to go through probate and that's with a discount?
I think that's pretty par for the course for probate, and that's something that's not long term. If it goes longer than the ones that I've seen, like just the normal probate, I could get a lot more expensive here.
Well, and other stuff on top of just the process of going through probate, because, that's you're talking about court fees and attorney fees, right? So now I think that also if you have the personal representative, that person can actually keep track of expenses and receipts, and they can pay themselves to do the job of managing the estate. So now you've got another, I think it's like up to 10% of the estate that can go to the personal representative. And that's whoever the judge picked at probate, through the probate process. And then the pain and suffering, right? Who can put a dollar amount on the pain and suffering of your family having to go to court, having to hire an attorney, having to, file these things and like just deal with all of it. Like it's a lot after they've just lost their loved one and now they have to deal with all of this.
But right now, I'm dealing with someone that hasn't even passed away. And one thing you need to know is the trust conversation and the estate planning process, they're going to help you set up what's called a financial and medical power of attorney. And so if you do not have financial power of attorney, even when someone's incapacitated, they don't even have to be dead. If you don't have that, then you're going to be stuck in limbo. So one of the things that I say is like, everyone's going to die, but we never know when we're going to get into a point where we are in the hospital and can't make any decisions for ourselves. You have medical power of attorney. That's who gets to decide what happens to them at the hospital. But the financial power of attorney gets to decide what happens when they're in the hospital with their financial um, stuff. Yeah.
Well, I think we've kind of touched on everything. Is there anything? I mean, I think the bottom line here is that we're encouraging you to have a trust, have an estate plan in place. Make sure to review it regularly because anytime you have like marriage, death, divorce, kids, that kind of stuff, like you definitely want to review what your plans are. Um, and if you do find yourself in probate, reach out to, someone trusted that can help identify your options and advise what's best for you. Anything else? I think we got it.
No, just prepare. That's it. Just be prepared. So.
Well, thanks so much for being on the episode today, Jeff,
Yep.
with Vindicator Solutions. Really appreciate all your time and expertise today on the topic of probate.
Oh, thank you. You've been great. Yeah.
If you like this content and want to support the channel, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go.